Have you ever wondered what it takes for a little girl growing up in a quiet village to become a woman who changes the world? Since I was a kid, the name Wangari Maathai was spoken and said with such great respect. Makes you wonder, who is Wangari Maathai? As I was doing this research, I wanted to understand, who is this woman? Who is this woman that left such a formidable legacy? Who to this date, her movement is still in progress since it didn't die with her. Not too long ago, a young girl who is just 22 years old hugged a tree for 72 hours in protest against deforestation, following in the footsteps of the incredible Wangari Maathai. I wanted to understand who she was and what gave her the drive to fight for the environment, because behind the movement there was a woman, and behind the woman there was a girl. Join me as we explore the life of Wangari Maathai and what drove her passion and determination to fight for our environment. This is part of the Wangari Maathai story. Welcome to Excellency Podcast, where we uncover the remarkable stories of women whose courage, vision, and determination left a lasting mark on history. In today's episode, we are beginning the story of Wangari Maathai, a girl born in the Green Highlands of Kenya, whose love for nature, passion for learning, and unwavering resilience would lay the foundation for an extraordinary life. Before she became the first African woman to receive a Nobel Prize, yes, the Nobel Prize, before she inspired millions to protest the environment, and before her name became known across the world, she was simply a curious child with big dreams and a big connection to the land she called home. Join me as we explore the first chapter of Wangari Maathai's journey, from her rural childhood to the classrooms that shaped her mind and the educational opportunities that prepared her for a future she could never have imagined. So who is Wangari Maathai? Wangari Maathai, born Wangari Muta, was born on 1st April 1940 in Ihithe village in the county of Nyeri, located in the central highlands of Kenya. Around this time, Kenya was a colony of the British Empire. So what pushed her to who she became? She was just a little girl in the forest. During her childhood, Wangari Maathai grew with lush and green nature. Thick forests covered the hills. The streams flowed with clean water, and the wildlife was a common occurrence in the forest. Who would have thought? Before she became known around the world, she was simply once a little girl who loved the towering trees that stretched for miles, as far as the eye could see. She didn't know it then, but these beautiful memories will one day change her life. Like the streams in many rural areas, the streams in her village were clean and clear, that people could drink directly from it. The fish, the insects, and the frogs thrived in there. She once described how she played with other children near the clean streams, and they watched and played with tadpoles. She recalled how fascinated she was with the tadpoles developing into frogs, illustrating the abundance and healthiness of the environment. Years later, she immediately recognized the destruction of the environment when she saw those same streams drying up because of deforestation. It's widely known in the land of Kenya that the fig tree was considered very sacred tree among the Kikuyu. One of the strongest memories that Wangari Maathai had was a huge wall fig tree that her mother warned her to never collect firewood underneath it, since it was believed to be the home of the Kikuyu god Ngai. Since childhood, Wangari Maathai understood that some trees needed to be protected. Like many families in rural Kenya, Wangari Maathai's family was no different. They farmed for food, as Kikuyus in Kenya are known to be farmers. Her family grew crops such as beans, maize, sweet potatoes, and arrowroots, and they also kept livestock. The children understood that healthy forests meant healthy families, since they learned that the land provided for everything from food to firewood to clean water, shelter, and even medicine. In the rural areas, the villagers lived naturally in balance with their surroundings, without calling it sustainability like it is called today. Village life was as simple as it can get. They reused materials whenever possible and composted the organic waste from the plants and from animals. And over the years, deforestation for commercial farming and development spread, and as a result, soils eroded, the rivers became smaller as they slowly dried up, and women had to walk further to collect firewood and fetch water. These changes really saddened her, as the land was once very rich, and this became the seed of her life's mission. Wangari Maathai learned a lot from her mother, and the one lesson that she learned a lot was to respect nature and work hard. When she mobilized women to plant trees years later, she was helping families regain food, income, clean water, and dignity. I mean, most children remember the games they played, and trust me, I am no exception. Wangari Maathai instead remembered the rivers that disappeared, the forests that fell silent, and sacred trees that once stood tall. These memories would soon grow into one of the greatest environmental movements the world has ever seen. Wangari Maathai was a very smart and intelligent girl. She began her education at the local primary school in Ihithe, Nyeri. At that time, school was not a priority and a common occurrence for many girls in rural Kenya. Her older brother questioned her mother. Why is she not going in school? Prompting her mother to send her to school about 8 years old. Sometimes a life can change due to a simple question, and for Wangari, it came from her older brother, giving a simple question: why is Wangari not in school? Who knew such a simple question would open a future no one had imagined? Wangari later joined St. Cecilia, where she learned her English, where she worked hard and was also sheltered from the Mau Mau uprising that was taking place at the moment. She later joined Loreto High School, where she clearly proved her brilliance when she finished top of her class. One of the biggest turning points in Wangari's life was in 1960, when a program supported and funded by the Kennedy family was organized by the Kenyan leader Tom Mboya. Wangari Maathai became one of the hundreds talented students from East Africa to be selected to go and study in the United States through the scholarship program known as the Kennedy Airlift. Can you imagine boarding a plane and leaving everything familiar behind? Trust me, this gives you the most confidence that you have ever gained, because you go to unfamiliar territory where you don't know anybody and you have to learn from scratch how to interact with everybody. And for a young woman from the hills of Nyeri, the journey to America was more than a change of country. It was the opening of a door that few African women of her generation have ever been given the chance to walk through. Wangari was enrolled at Mount Saint Scholastica College, now known as Benedictine College, in Atchison, Kansas, and studied biology. She studied subjects such as zoology, chemistry, and botany. Wangari Maathai graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in biology. Her success showed determination and resilience. She returned home to Kenya after she earned her Master of Science in Biology Sciences in 1966, where she expected to build her career in a new independent Kenya. However, it wasn't that simple, as she soon faced discrimination for being a woman and highly educated at that. Though she didn't give up, instead, she persevered and continued her academic career. The little girl who once wandered through the forest of Nyeri had crossed the ocean, and she did not just earn a degree, she gained scientific understanding and confidence. Wangari Maathai returned to Kenya with something few women of her generation possessed: a world-class education and a deep understanding of biology science. But as she looked across the country she loved, she noticed something troubling. The forests she had once known as a child were disappearing. The rivers were shrinking and drying up, and the soils were degrading and eroding and losing its richness, and rural families, most especially the women, were paying the high price for it. Her education had taught her how nature worked. Her homeland showed her why that knowledge mattered. Those experiences planted the seed of an idea that would grow into the Green Belt movement. The Green Belt movement would go on to transform lives, restore millions of trees, and inspire people around the world. But that remarkable story deserves its own episode. Join me on my next episode where we explore how one woman would inspire millions by planting a single tree, how the Green Belt movement came to be, and how one idea grew to shake the government and changing the course of Kenya's environmental history. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you on next time.